All right, and get ready for our first speaker, who is Dr. Stephanie Mastrota, lead doctor of Flanders Dental Studio. Come on up, Dr. Mastrota. Boom, go get it.
So this is the copy of my Chapter 7 bankruptcy discharge from January of 2019. So that was just 6 years ago. I was 58 years old, and everything I had worked for the last 30 years was gone. That means my house, my dental practice, my retirement account, my real estate, pretty much anything else I had. So that wasn't exactly what I had planned for my life. When I walked through the doors at the University of Pennsylvania Dental School in 1983, which I think was probably before a lot of people in this room were even born, my plan was pretty similar, I think, to a lot of people's. I was going to go to graduate school, I was going to come out with honors, get married, have kids, start a dental practice, and I did do all those things. I got married to another dentist, I had 2 kids. This is the 200-year-old farmhouse that we renovated into a 2-chair dental practice, and we started a fee-for-service dental practice that was very, very successful. And then 2 things happened along the way that were quite unexpected. In 2008, a friend of mine, a colleague, asked me to cover him 2 days a week for like 2 or 3 weeks while he found a new associate. And so that 2 weeks turned into 10 years. And if you can't read that terrible handwriting, it says, "Your son stuffed this envelope, love, Matt." My son had graduated from the United States Naval Academy in May of 2010, and his first assignment was working with a group, and their mission was to recruit already licensed dentists. And my name actually came up on his list. So he came home that day and he said, "Mom, I'm recruiting you into the Navy Reserve." And I was like, okay. So for the next year and a half, I went through all the process, the paperwork, security clearance, physical challenge, medical checks, and finally, I went to boot camp, and that's my boot camp graduation picture, and I was 52 years old there. So I had the honor of promoting my son, giving him his first promotion from ensign to lieutenant junior grade. That was really great. And since the Marine Corps gets its medical assets from the Navy, I actually served in the Marines in the 14th Dental Battalion. And we did a lot of pretty cool things. One of them was I participated in a humanitarian mission called African Lion. And these are the tents we set up where we did dentistry in Africa, obviously. I also had my 15 minutes of fame because I was featured in the Continental Marine Quarterly magazine, which at the time was actually a pretty big deal. So a lot of fun things I did and I learned. But the most important thing I learned in the military is that your brain can convince your body to do things you didn't think were possible. And that we are all more capable than we even realize. So those 2 completely unexpected events literally changed the trajectory of my life. Because with the money that I had, the financial flexibility from Oasis, and the self-confidence I gained in the military, I was finally able to leave a very unhealthy marital situation. And without getting into the gritty details, I can tell you that if one party is uncooperative, it can stretch out. A divorce can stretch out for years, and it is exhausting and expensive. And so there came to a point where I realized the only way I could end that was to give everything up. So I gave my now ex-husband the house, the dental practice, the retirement accounts. I even agreed to pay him alimony for a short period of time. And that was really difficult, but I knew that that was the thing that had to be done. And despite the fact that all I had left when that was done was my car, some clothes, and $1,500 in my bank account, I also felt very relieved. I felt free. So I decided to try to look at the positive side of things. And my alarm was set every morning to that happy song. And that really is the way I felt, despite my kind of financial unhealthiness at that time. So I moved to Philadelphia. I lived in like a 700 square foot apartment. I slept on an air mattress for a few months till I could afford a real mattress. Occasionally I had some uninvited guests, like in the form of mice and roaches, but again, looking at the positive side. So I did live in a great place. In Manayunk on Main Street, every year we host the 21-mile turnaround for the Philadelphia Marathon. So this is like a super fun day. It's an all-day party. And it's really great to see like those front runners that are going so fast still after 20-something miles. But the really inspiring part is when you see the people all the way at the end. It's starting to get dark out, and they're walking or pushing a companion in a wheelchair. And there's still people on the sidelines cheering them on, just making sure everybody is going to get across the finish line safely. We have the Clydesdale Parade, and that's just the Clydesdales coming up the street handing out cases of beer. So it's pretty fun. Anybody from Philadelphia knows what the Mummers Parade is. But for those of you that don't, it is a 12-hour parade that takes place on New Year's Day. And I'm pretty sure this is where the saying, it's a Philly thing you don't understand, comes from. But what a lot of people don't know is that there are smaller Mummers Parades that take place throughout the year. And this was 2018, right after the Eagles won the Super Bowl. And all good Birds fans will recognize Jason Kelce in his Mummers costume playing the saxophone. So there was a lot of fun stuff going on. So now it's like 2020, I'm starting to make some money. I finally could move to a nicer apartment down the road. This was probably one of my favorite places that I ever lived. I lived on the top floor. I had floor-to-ceiling windows. I could look out and see the Schuylkill River on one side, saw the Manayunk Canal on the other side. We had security. And one of the best perks was that I finally had a dedicated parking spot in a locked garage. After dealing with parking in that mess for a couple of years, that was very welcome. And then there was a hurricane. And Manayunk made the cover of the Wall Street Journal. And there's my apartment complex buried in the water at the back of that picture. And somewhere just beyond that street sign, underneath those trees, is my dedicated parking spot with my car in it. And these were the boats that the rescue workers brought to evacuate people from the building. So when I left that day, I didn't realize I wouldn't be able to get back in for another month. So I threw some stuff in a bag, and I really, really held it together because I kept telling myself, like, it's okay, it's just one more thing, it's gonna be fine. And I did quite well with that until I was speaking to the customer service rep from Zappos. And I'm explaining to her, like, I need to have these sneakers overnighted, and it's gotta come to the Holiday Inn Express because and it's like the whole thing. And she said to me, sounds like you've had a rough couple days. And I was like, yeah, it hasn't been great. She said, I'll tell you what, I'm gonna make sure you get these sneakers by 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, and we're gonna send this courtesy of Zappos. And I burst into tears. And then she started crying, and I was crying, and it was just that moment of humanity, of just unadulterated kindness that really, really made me realize, like, what it is. It's going to be fine. Everything's going to be okay. And then this guy, who I had grown rather fond of, said he could distract me. So we got in his car, and we drove up to Stonington, Connecticut, to see his other true love, his boat, Blue Skies. Now, obviously, he's been traveling back and forth from Philly to Stonington for many years to spend time on his boat, so sailing is really important to him, and I do not know how to sail, but I do know how to shop, so I managed to kind of look the part, and at some point when we were not sailing on that boat, he did ask me to marry him, so that made me very happy. So while all this is going on in my personal life, there was a lot going on in my professional life as well. I worked at 5 different practices in 6 years. And every time I got to one of these practices, I thought, okay, this is it. This is the one. I'm going to be here through retirement. And it didn't really quite work out that way. But the really interesting thing is that I, over my entire career, dedicated a lot of time and resources to continuing education. But the things I learned in these practices, I never could have learned in a seminar. So at Oasis Dental, we had a CRAC machine, which I loved working with. So I learned all about digital dentistry. I also learned how to do high-quality dentistry in an insurance-dependent practice, which was very different from anything I had ever done. From Oasis Dental, I went to dentistry in Philadelphia. So the doctor that owned this practice was a Pankey graduate. He's a faculty member of Spears in Scottsdale. He was very, very conservative. And when he hired me, it was with the intention to have me take over his practice because he was getting ready to retire. But in the course of the year that I worked there, he only let me see 6 patients, so that didn't quite work out. So I left dentistry in Philadelphia, and I went to Philadelphia Dentistry, which was about 2 blocks away. The doctor that owned this practice, his focus was on community service. And the year I worked there, he had dedicated 50% of his salary to local charitable organizations and events. So we got like 100 backpacks, packed them with school supplies, gave them to kids in need. We packed 100 duffel bags with toiletries and towels and blankets, and every day people from the staff would take 1 or 2 bags, and we'd leave them with unhoused members of our community. Ken was really supportive of LGBTQ, so we did a lot of events that supported that community. We went to fundraisers and posed in front of step and repeats. We went to silent auctions and bought stuff. And that's a picture of me with some of our patients at a fundraiser in their evening wear. So this was super fun working here, but it was only a part-time job. And then I moved to Smile Culture, and from there I went to Alpha Dental Excellence. So these were both full-time jobs, and they were very similar practices. So high volume, 20-plus operatories, a lot of providers, high turnover. Prior to this, throughout like literally my entire career, I had probably extracted 3 teeth. And when I got to Alpha Dental, I told the doctor, like, look, I don't know how to extract teeth. And he said, yes, you do. You just don't know it yet. I'm going to show you how. And so there I did simple extractions, surgical extractions, full arch extractions, third molar extractions. So the lesson from that office was, you're never too old to learn something new. And then around this time, I got this email that was talking about this great practice. It was beautiful in a beautiful location, and it did look good. And I looked at it and I was like, Connecticut? And then I looked again and I said, oh, Shoreline of Connecticut. I know that place. And so I spoke to the recruiter for about 45 minutes. And at the end of our conversation, he said, I'm going to set up a phone call with the owner. I'm going to tell you up front, you do not fit the profile that he's looking for, but I think it merits a phone call. Then I talked to GT, I think for about an hour and a half, and here I am. So. So I will tell you that I thought the roadmap of my life would look like this. It ends up looking more like this. But the funny thing is, despite all that, or maybe because of it, I actually got all those things that I wanted. I'm happily married, have a great relationship with my kids and my grandkids. I have a job that I love, and I work with really amazing people every day. So what did I learn out of this? 3 things. First thing is always trust your inner voice. No matter what else was going on, all the roadblocks and unexpected events and everything else that happened, I always knew I was doing the right thing. And years ago, I had seen this quote, and Ovid is a Roman poet, and it just resonated with me, so I wrote it down. And I will tell you, in the really, really days when I was not feeling too good, I would reference back to this, and it was very helpful. Don't miss the magic of the moment. Like, you might be living in a tiny apartment with rodents and bugs, but there's a Super Bowl Eagles champion outside your door playing a saxophone. And that happened one time only. And keep moving forward. Years ago, I had worked with a woman who was in her 80s, and she had endured a lot of hardship in her life. And she showed up every day for work on time and outworked everybody. And people would always say to her, "How do you do it?" And she'd say, "I get up in the morning, I get out of bed, and I go." So those days that I really didn't feel like getting out of bed, I always thought about her, and that definitely helped me move forward. So 6 years ago, when I was standing in front of that bankruptcy judge, feeling very deflated, he said, "Before you leave, remember this. You have been blessed with a fresh start. When you look back at the mistakes that got you here, learn from them, but don't dwell on them. You've now been given the opportunity to turn the page and write the next chapter of your life." So I think if you take away anything from this story, it would be that. Every day when you get up, you have the opportunity to turn the page and write the next chapter of your life.